Aloha, friends and neighbors. This is Rollin Frost, Kona astrologer, and I'm going to bring you program 1058. And we're going to use the sky mirror to go through the second week, middle of March, 2017. The dreadful year of President Trump. Anyway, there's a full moon coming up Sunday. It's a 22 Virgo. Takes a lot of the fire sign Trump kind of stuff off the table for at least a month. And trines Pluto. So there's a lot of discovery going to go on. You're not going to like authority much. It squares Saturn starting Sunday for a month. Let's see what it looks like day by day. All right, here's your chart. The sun is going through the last 10 days of Pisces. And as it begins, where you're at right now, it's exactly sextile Pluto. A lot of discovery happening, huh? Yeah, it's good. Next 10 days, it's in Pisces. Then it switches into Aries. We still have the T-squared, Jupiter, Uranus, and Pluto. Jupiter's still beaten up on Uranus, homeless and environmentalists. Saturn, though, is going to help the homeless a little bit. He's trining it. We'll see how it goes. We're going to run the moon around the edge of this planetary pattern, and as it makes angles to the various planets, it generates the mood of the times. Now, it's not your chart. It's kind of like the generic chart. You'll notice if you're around other people. So if you're watching the Thursday night show, the moon's in Leo, and there's a nice sextile to Jupiter, lots of truth and wisdom coming out. And late in the evening, this is actually 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, Friday morning, there's a nice trine to Uranus. Brotherhood is showing. Environmental stuff. In la catch, I am another you. That's the Mayan greeting. It's true, you know. So, in Friday morning, about the time you're going to work, there's a nice trine to Saturn. You should be on time. Everything's looking good. In the middle of Friday, on March 10th, there's a nice trine to Mars. Heroes are out. Hooray! Get physical. Be a hero. So we get a nice lineup here from Thursday night all the way through Friday. Around dinner time, the moon goes by the north node here, and we all feel kind of like nurturing. The moon's gone into Virgo. Goes into Virgo about lunchtime. You'll notice the difference. As you go through Friday night, things get a little more dicey. Neptune opposition coming up. Yeah. Here's the last new moon was at 8 Pisces, and your Saturday starts there. So there's a little bit of confusion Saturday morning. Continues through the middle of the day Saturday. When that opposition to Neptune happens, that's like between breakfast and lunch. You could have some bad smells. You could have some too much music, too much color, too much Neptune, huh? You won't like Neptune much Saturday morning. But by Saturday night, here's the trine to Pluto. Moon's in Virgo, trining Pluto in Capricorn. Discovery happens Saturday night. Yeah, lots of neat discoveries are going on, despite all this stuff, despite all this weird stuff. So Friday's nice and mellow. Saturday's confusion pretty much all day. And by the time you get to Sunday, see that full moon is right here. See, there's the full moon right there. And that full moon is really about 2 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning. So you might as well figure it to be Saturday night. I mean, you had a confusing day. Stay home, do some discovery, and consider Saturday night a full moon night, like Sunday morning, when there'll be difficulty getting around and talking, and could be a little depressive, because this full moon is on Saturn, and Mercury is there. So a little mental depression could set in, and watch yourself a little bit. By Sunday after dinner, the moon leaves Virgo and goes into Libra. Now Libra is ruled by the planet Venus. You notice I put the ruling planets around the edge of the chart this week. But it won't do you much good, because here's an opposition to Venus. Happens on Monday afternoon. There's no sweets there. You're not happy with love and pleasure on Monday. And it gets worse as you go into Tuesday. Here's the T-square. Starts with the square to Pluto, kind of early in the morning Thursday. There could be sirens about the time you go to work on Tuesday the 14th. And then everybody overdoes it. And there's too much. And the lawyers come out and want too much. That's what they do. The whole vibe continues in kind of a frenzy till you get to the Uranus thing. When the moon opposes Uranus, it's about dinner time and there's interruptions. Is the power out? A lot of people are having a storm system here. And Tuesday will not be happy. There is finally a sextile to Saturn. Happens about 9-10 o'clock Tuesday night. Things settle down. This is a sextile to Saturn, so at least you have an option of settling things down and getting organized late Tuesday night. Wednesday, on the 15th, the moon's in Scorpio. As you go towards the middle of the day, it gets increasingly angry, because here's the moon opposing Mars. All those young guys and all those Aries and all those fire signs want too much. Selfish buggers. That's just the way Wednesday is. So ask yourself what you're protecting. If you're getting angry in the middle of the day, you don't know what you're protecting. That's the key to handling Mars. Ask yourself. The warrior god is out. And you'll see some road rage out there on Wednesday. Thursday, on the 16th, starts very nicely with the moon making a nice trine to Neptune. There's music. Yeah, not bad. Scorpio moon. As you go through Thursday in the evening, here's a nice sextile to Pluto. There's discovery, something you could believe in, I think. Yeah. Continues right through to Friday. And most of the day, the moon's still in Scorpio. And there's a nice trine to the sun here, just about lunchtime, after lunch in the afternoon. So if you got something to believe in Thursday morning and discovered some trips here Thursday night, you accomplished something. You should be proud of yourself. Friday, after lunch, the moon moves into Sagittarius. We're in a fire sign, a mutable fire sign. So the Scorpio period, pretty good aside from Wednesday and the temper tantrums. Thursday's nice. Friday's nice. And even when you go into Sagittarius, still feels pretty good, because here is a trine to Venus. And Saturday morning, there's some sweets. Stay in bed late. Be with someone you love. In the afternoon of Saturday, here's a nice trine to Mercury. The kids are happy. We're communicating. Feels pretty good. Moon in Sagittarius. Sunday's pretty good too. Moon's still in Sagittarius. And between breakfast and lunch, you got a nice sextile to Jupiter. There's wisdom flowing. And around dinner time, the moon trines Uranus. There's some brotherhood going on. And then the moon hits Pluto. Now that's Sunday night about 10 o'clock or so. I mean Saturn. It's hitting Saturn, excuse me. And you could be a little depressed. We'll see, because there is a square to the sun. And if you try to get organized here Sunday night, it might not work in your favor. So as you go late Sunday, a little extra care is needed. And that's the way it is this coming week for you. Here, a short note on my thing about Mr. Trump. I don't like predicting a difficult thing, people like this. And only because of the eclipse did I do it. But it goes back to 1981 when a newspaper reporter interviewed me, and I wanted to know if I did any famous people. Well, I'd done a library lecture on Reagan, so I said, okay, let's look at Reagan. And I started looking at him, and son of a gun, I forgot the lady was a reporter. And I said, man, there's an eclipse. It's right on his sun. And I went on and on about it, and said, man, this could be death or insanity. And if Reagan gets out of this, if he survives, you know, this was all done in early 81. I said, next few months it'll hit. Sure did. I said, if he won't be out of the hospital, you know, until the end of... Get out the vice president. This prediction got me in a lot of trouble, believe it or not. I tried to get some other astrologers to sign on so I wasn't the only one. My friend Moby Dick said, quoted me a Bible passage, "He who predicts death on someone will have it visited on himself." Son of a gun, just after Reagan was shot, my father died. And then Moby Dick died. So I don't take this lightly. So this was published February 4th, 1981. I think he got whacked in April, last few days in April. I never used the word doom. I learned to be careful about newspaper reporters. Like in yellow here, these are the words, these are my words. The rest of it is kind of her interpretation. But I said, if he's still around, he gets a little better in July and August, and by the end of the year. So, I did this by accident, folks. I didn't really want to do it. It just happened. Had no control over it. This time I got a lot more information on President Trump. Problem now, ethically, I really need to warn him. But we're up against two cases of mistaken identity. The raven and the goose, both domesticated animals, very valuable to mankind, were mistaken for wild things. Now the birds I just showed you, the minor birds, they're wild, and they're the little sister of the raven and the crow. And they're very, very smart too. They'll talk and they're friendly, but the raven is another matter. By the way, these are ravens, not crows. Big difference. In fact, the identifying them as a crow is almost as bad as a wild thing, because people didn't like crows. When I grew up, California had a 50-cent a piece bounty on crows. Farmers hated them. But ravens are very different. They don't flock up, they go in pairs. Our raven, the ala-la, is probably the most intelligent of all the ravens. Yes, more vocabulary than any other raven, and they use tools. These are very, very smart birds. It's a good idea to go back on the history of some of this. How did this come to be? Edgar Allan Poe, nevermore. The question is, the mistaken identity, the wild birds, have got us caught up in a very good law, but in this case, poorly applied. So let's go back. Let's take a look at how this all started. Back, 1,000, maybe 2,000 years ago, Hawaii was a bird paradise. Now, it wasn't easy to get to paradise for birds. These are the honey creepers, much studied by evolutionists. Because if you were a bird and you managed to get your mate across 3,000 miles of ocean and find paradise, well, there wasn't any competition. So these famous honey creepers, two little birds, not many little birds got here, but two little birds evolved into all of these different birds. Yes, and so it was a good place, and you could change into the better forms by evolution very quickly. The really big birds, they could make it more easily. So the people that study bones came up with 40 to 50 geese species. Yeah, before Hawaiians got here, while bird paradise was still alive, 40 to 50 species of geese. 4 or 5 species of ravens. Yes. In fact, the alala we know, the Hawaiian raven, was the smallest of the 4 or 5. Well, that makes sense if you're going to take it in your home. But it's not a crow. It's a raven. It's a raven. And the only reason they're in the wild is because they lost their homes. They're homeless. Of course, a lot of those birds had lost the ability to fly. Even our raven doesn't like to. He's a climber, got big gnarly feet. and so when the Hawaiians showed up, all these birds walking around the ground, oh boy, chicken and turkey for dinner and breakfast and lunch. And the dogs and the pigs and the rats that came with Hawaiians had a field day. It didn't take long before most of those birds were gone. The raven and the goose turned out to be very valuable and moved right in with Hawaiians, and for the last 1,000 years or more have lived happily as domesticated animals, while all the other birds pretty much were gone. Hawaii's famous for having birds go extinct, you know. So how did we get to this situation we're in now? Well, we're very lucky because we have a place where some very fine observers came to Hawaii and recorded all their observations. It wasn't just Captain Cook. There was 2 other co-captains, Captain Clark and Captain King, 2 ships. They were naturalists. They were going around the world looking at new cultures, and they took specimens, and they were looking for valuable plants and valuable animals to take back to England. And so they were very interested in the birds of Hawaii. Captain Cook said he estimated 200,000 people lived along the west coast of the island of Hawaii. He did this by counting the rooftops and multiplying times 7 or 8 or something. Let's say 10. Let's say there was only 20,000 houses. Well, then Cook went on and said, in the same paragraph, the most common house pet was a large black bird. Now, half of those houses had, birds in them. That's 10,000, birds. Happily living in the homes, inside the houses, climbing around underneath the roofs, taking out the rats, the centipedes, the scorpions, all the bad stuff you don't want. The raven took care of it happily. And Alala was built to climb around upside down underneath a Hawaiian rooftop, a thatched hut, and clean out the thatch. Boy, they were great helpers, besides being very intelligent and talking. Well, this is a good time to get into some of the evidence that these 2 birds were domesticated. And it wasn't just Captain Cook that wrote about them, but the other 2 captains did also. Captain King especially would get out there and walk around a lot. Listen to what Captain King had to say here. I've already mentioned in former account the quadrupeds and fishes, we have no more to add, but we've seen a greater variety of birds. The crimson-colored one, dark green bird, its bill. Anyway, it describes some of these birds, including the long curved bill, a small pale green bird, another with dirty mixed feathers. Anyway, these birds they brought to us alive. We had also brought to us by the natives a dull green and dark, well, that's another colored dove. Ravens were also seen. Here we go. And some of these were kept about their homes, about their houses. And they had some superstitious notions about them because they called one an Iato'oa. They had geese, tame, but we supposed them taken while young, as we did not ever see them at their houses. Well, you didn't leave the baby geese out in the yard, because pigs, rats, they'd be goners. So you had to keep the little baby geese inside until they were big enough to defend. So it stands to reason you wouldn't see the baby geese out there. But also, it means they found some baby ravens in the homes. Well, that's according to Captain King. Here's another reference. I got this from the Captain Cook Society in Australia. He said after March 1979, when Cook had been killed, Captain Clerk assumed command and wrote details of the plants and animals that he had seen. He noted, ravens are found here, but they are scarce. See, he didn't go in the homes. Clerk stayed on the ship. Their color is dark brown, so they were scarce in the wild, and their note is different from those in Europe. In the same month, Captain King also wrote about it, said ravens were here and kept in their houses. They knew the difference between a crow and a raven. Ravens are all over the world. The British Empire keeps those ravens up in the London Tower. It's said if they're gone, the British kingdom will be gone. So they're very famous. They talk and they have their own chef and everybody knows their names. In the Middle Ages, there was a pair of ravens in every little village. So there's a raven named Jimmy that you see in the movies that made a lot of money in Hollywood. He's in all the old Jimmy Stewart movies. Quote the Raven, Nevermore, by Edgar Allan Poe. Wild raven came in his door, sat on a bust of Pallas and said, Nevermore. 3 very observant naturalists. When Captain Clerk brought the ships into London after his voyage, he had 120 chests full of specimens. A lot of them were skins of birds to preserve the feathers. Now bear in mind, these guys had been all over the world. So when they got to Hawaii, they had a lot of old cultures to compare it to. Now this is very significant passage. Check this one out. It has been remarked by voyagers that the society in friendly islands pay adoration to particular birds. He's talking about the South Pacific. And it seems to be a custom that in prevalence in here, that in these islands, that ravens are perhaps the objects of it here. For Mr. King saw 2 of these birds perfectly tame at the village of Kaka'ao, and was told they were Iato'ois. Somebody said that meant sacred. Another Hawaiian lady told me that was noisy. They were noisy birds. He offered several articles for them, which were all refused, and he was particularly cautioned not to hurt or offend them. These were the pets of the Hawaiians. Now, they would do a lot to get a piece of iron. They would, they were addicted to gambling. Here on the same page, it's funny. Anyway, reading Cook, you find out these were very healthy, happy people. And ravens and geese were domesticated. Yes. It's a neat thing about bird feathers. They don't lose their color. Captain Cook was given a beautiful red feather down in the South Pacific because they love their birds there. And it was so valuable, he gave it as a gift to King Kamehameha. So Hawaiians didn't kill the birds. They would trap them, and they would take feathers off them. That was pure gold. Some of the areas above Kona were feather areas. Guys would lay there and cover themselves with leaves and put a little piece of bait in their fingers. And as soon as the bird landed there to get the bait, bang, they'd grab them, take the right feathers off, and release them. They knew birds, these Hawaiians. So knowing that they cherished the ala and the nene, it's important. They had their pick of these two special species. And after they picked them, they lived with them for over 1,000 years. This book details the early days when they got the first few ravens and trapped them. And I remember when the guy sprayed Roundup and killed 2 out of 3 birds they had. But if you want to find out about these birds, these guys were some of the final. There's a few left in the wild. They didn't last very long. Got to realize that Hawaiians all died very quickly, from 200,000 people, and in a couple of decades they were down to 2,000 people in Kona. Where'd all the birds go? Well, they all headed for the hills. They lost their homes. But, they didn't last very long in the so-called wild. So there was very few of them by the time that our biologists and the endangered species law came along. And Saving the Raven, this book, if you want to find out more about it, the people that did that grew to love these individual ravens. They're very lovable. The answer is to sell these birds in pairs, mated pairs, to hotels, zoos, like very valuable parrots, and we will save the species. And once you understand they're domestic pets, ridiculous to put them out in the wild. You're throwing them out of their homes into very dangerous places, wasting the gene pile. No, more better, we put them in survivable places. Lots of hotels would like to have a pair of ravens. Yeah, lots of other places, lots of specialists. Folks, volunteer. Volunteer. Write or call these people. Yeah. Or these people. Or the San Diego Zoo, which is a major sponsor. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that would like to save this most valuable bird to humanity.